Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Kayla on the podcast, another fellow Minnesotan. I love having more Minnesotans on because, like I've told many of the Minnesotans that I've had on, just talking to all these people from California, even though that's where she's going in about 8 days, in Florida, how great their weather is and how great life is down there, it makes you just so depressed. So it's nice to have another, fellow upper Midwesterner on. And she's an IFBB figure pro. And she does really all things health and fitness. And she's also, before we get right into it, she's the first guest that I've had on after I've already met them. So when I met her, I was at the MPC Twin Cities this last weekend. So I met her and we talked for a couple of minutes. And it's Kayla, it is great to finally have you on and talk to you about your journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm excited. It's kind of hard to talk about yourself too sometimes, but that's what you're here for. So
that is why I didn't do one of those podcasts that like people do where it's like, I'm just going to talk about like what I experienced yesterday and stuff. Like some of those podcasters that, it's like, I could not do that where it's like describing like so more power to those people that can do it. But it's impossible for me as well. But before we get into that, as much as this pains me, why don't you tell us what the weather's like in at least your part of the Midwest today? Because I ask this question to everyone, and it's always going to be my icebreaker no matter what.
So I'm from Minnesota, but I actually live in Fargo, North Dakota now.
Oh God.
So it's actually really nice out. So it's like summer. So it's actually a really nice day. So I can't complain, honestly. I actually haven't been outside. I should probably go outside.
Well, and you bring up a point that I always love to point out to everyone whenever I can, is that the movie Fargo it's not in Minnesota, everyone. It's just not. It's in North Dakota. I got to point that out to everyone. They're like, "Oh yeah, Minnesota's like Fargo," and I was like, "Well, you're close, but it's in the wrong state." That's like saying, "Oh, St. Paul, that's in Wisconsin." It's like, no, come on. I mean, so
everyone always says that too, and they say like, "Oh, so like the movie Fargo," and I'm like, one, I've never seen that movie. Two, it was filmed in Bemidji, Minnesota, and three, it's completely not right. So
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you go up to Duluth, you might hear that accent, but no, not in the Twin Cities or anything like that, like it portrays in the movie. But before we get into the stereotypes of Minnesotans in film, because that's a whole different podcast that I'll probably end up getting on eventually, why don't you just give us your backstory on what eventually led you to becoming a bodybuilder?
Sure. So I guess like all growing up as like a kid and stuff, I was always really competitive. I was in sports, volleyball, gymnastics, basketball, softball, all like I tried pretty much everything, track, all through high school. And then getting into college, I didn't play a college sport. However, I still love to be competitive. And most of all, like I really loved gymnastics because it was very individualized. And I love to push myself and just see how far I could go with it. So I found weightlifting in the weight room. And I had also gained the freshman 15 and of course was like, I don't like this. So I decided that I was going to learn for myself how to eat better. And I had been told about this bodybuilding like figure competition. They're like, because I was like, oh, I would like to lose some weight and stuff and really like to train and whatnot. And like a friend of mine who helped me with some training and stuff back in the day brought it up and he's like, you would be really good at it. So I was like, all right, cool, I'll try it. So I had a little bit of guidance my first show. That was 2015. So I was sophomore in college. And then 20 years old, started my first show. It was NANBF Natural Minnesota. I had no idea what I was doing. I just didn't, I don't think I even tracked anything. I don't know what I weighed. I don't know any of that. Didn't do check-ins or anything, how the whole process goes now. But I pretty much just kind of followed this like template that he gave me and I got fourth place, out of 6. So that was pretty cool. And I was like, all right, that was kind of fun. Like, and the one thing that, made me want to come back and do it again that I still remember to this day was just like, at the end of the show, one of the judges came up to me, and he was like, if you'd get leaner, like you'd be dangerous. And I was like, all right. So my little competitive streak was like, I don't remember that. So I like took some time off, didn't know anything about a reverse diet or anything like that, just started eating again. And of course, gained some weight back, but was still training, still loved it. And I was like, I really wanted to give this another try. And so like I went at it again, did some more research on my own and just like tried it again. So I did the same show the next year. Won my IPE pro card, so like your natural pro card. Ended up winning the whole show. Still was like, holy crap, how'd this happen? Then I moved to Fargo because I graduated college, and then I wanted to do the NPC because I had heard about that and like getting up to a higher level. And to me, that's where I wanted to go. So then I switched over to NPC, and now about in that time to about 2017, I started powerlifting, and that was also really fun, something that I really enjoy. That helped with my physique as well. And then last year, 2021, I finally won my pro card, so that was pretty awesome.
That is great. And I mean, getting into this sport, there are so many misconceptions about just bodybuilding in general. And then when you add the female side of it, I mean, it just gets multiplied by like 10. Was there anything that you were surprised by when you got into this sport? Or was it one of those things where you sort of knew a lot ahead of time? Or how did you sort of deal with jumping into this sport? Because it's one thing that a lot of people can almost like drown in it when they realize, like, first of all the things that you really have to do to compete and just how time consuming and how draining it can be.
Yeah, I think, I kind of go back and forth with this part of like, I wish I had a legit like coach, like an actual coach when I started. And then at the same time, I'm like, but I learned a ton from like just doing it on my own. So like up until 2019, I had pretty much just done it myself. I had some help from like a friend for a couple years, just as like a second eye kind of thing. But I did all my own nutrition, did all of that. And I feel like I just gradually learned things as I screwed up, basically. I just kept screwing up and I was like, okay, well, I probably shouldn't do that again. And then I'm a very like numbers type person. I like to track things. So I would just like track stuff and then I would just learn from that. And like I still have notes in my phone from like prep of 2017 when I was writing down all my prep numbers. Like I still have it. And a notebook of like 2018 and my first run at nationals and like what I changed every week. Like I still have those and I just like wrote them down every week and I just kind of played it by ear. So I guess like that's how I learned. And I did a lot of research on my own too. I like read books, read articles, talked to people, asked them questions. People who were higher up in the industry, I asked questions. And just made connections as I would go to shows and go to events and stuff like that, which was really awesome. So I guess just kind of gradually got myself into it, figured out what didn't work, and then found what did work. So
I mean, this podcast and bodybuilding in general should just be renamed Trial and Error. I mean, I've said that about a dozen times on here, but because that's really all it is. And 95% of everything that I've ever learned in my life has come from me doing stupid stuff. So I will stand by that opinion, probably for at least the next couple of years of my life. But I mean, just in this lifestyle in general, people do not understand the mental side of this sport. People will always notice the physical changes. They'll come up to you, oh my God, Kayla, you look amazing, you look great. They won't understand, though, that mental transformation that's taken place as well, which is 100 times more important than any of the physical changes. What has this journey been like for you mentally?
that's a loaded question. I guess mentally, like when I first started, it was a huge confidence boost because I went from like being like chunky, like I still, and I shouldn't even say that because I looked like decent, like to anyone else. But in my mind, it just like, I didn't like how I looked. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel confident. And even just that first year, like getting into the weight room and just getting more comfortable there, like I was like the only girl that would ever go train in the weight room. So like I had just to go talk to people. And that like really helped my like social skills and stuff because I don't really like to be social anyways. But in the gym, I feel great. I'm super extroverted at the gym. And then, as it went on into being like, hey, like I can be like a top athlete or like I can get my pro card. This isn't necessarily just for fun anymore. Like I'm taking this like very, very seriously. So, there were times where, I started to have like binge eating behaviors and I caught myself and I was like, hey, I like can't do this. Like that's bad. And I needed to change my mindset. I also went through a bunch of hormone issues and I was out for about 6 months and training 3 days a week at like RPE 7 and increasing your food, gaining weight is a really big mind. So that can be difficult. But then coming out of it, like I had the best prep I've ever had, and I prepped for 7 months, and I just got better and better and better with shows. So it was because I was healthy, and I was fed well. So that transition was hard too. But then, like I said, like as you go, you just get more mentally tough as you go too. So like now going on into like my first like pro rookie season, it's like, oh, I'm like the little pond in the big ocean again, and I was a little fish in the big ocean. That's what I meant. And now it's just like I went from like top, like placing first in my class, to now I'm like right back at the bottom, and I know I'm small, so like there's just that mentality of like, am I going to be ready in time? Am I going to like be big enough? Am I going to, there's always this question, but I feel like as long as you put like trust in yourself, in your coach, in the process, and you just trust it, like, and you put your all in on it, like you can't go wrong. So there's nothing else you can do more than that.
A 7-month prep, how did you deal with that? Because like I told you, I couldn't even make it 4 weeks through a prep. So how did you deal with a 7-month prep?
I really wanted it. I mean, so I've been working with Jason Theobald of Scooby Prep since June of 2019 or 2020, yes. And he got my hormones fixed and stuff. And because I was healthy, we started prep in January. My first show was scheduled for like second weekend of April or something like that. It was the Border Clash down in Florida. And we cut down that whole time, like up cardio to like 60 minutes a day, was the most I was doing. And then my calories were down to like 1100 on a low day, I think. But again, I'm 105 pounds, ripped and lean on stage. So like it was decent, and it wasn't horrible, but it was only 12 weeks for that first show. And then after that, he started increasing food and decreasing cardio, and I kept getting leaner and leaner and more shredded. So, and it's because I was healthy and my biofeedback was good. I was hitting PRs like peak week. And so I just was making sure that fatigue management was under control as much as it could be. And then we would do refeeds every week. And I just like mentally, I feel like when I go into a prep and I know what's on the line, like there's a switch that just flips, and it's here, and I just go.
Please tell me you're one of those people that like add spices and stuff like that to like your chicken and everything else, because I talked to the last guest that I had on was one of those plain Janes, and literally that should be a punishment at some prison camps, in my opinion, is like being forced to eat plain food for, the whole time you're there. But like, please tell me you at least spice things up a little bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I used like different spices and stuff and sauces like to a certain point in prep, and whatnot. But Jason rates my meals, and I just follow exactly what he says.
Yeah. Hey, again, that's one of the benefits of having a coach. Like a lot of people, like you said, some people, and I think you're honestly the exception, because I've had a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I went into this without a coach, and then they just really struggle. But some people like you, yeah, they are able to just take that experience and just learn from it. But yeah, having a coach can make things a lot easier, just in any aspect really of the sport. But like you mentioned it before, you are not on the tall side of the sport, and I met you, I saw that, and I'm on the taller side too. I'm 6'3", and everyone she can confirm that I'm actually tall because she's actually met me. So a lot of people on here are like, yeah, you're not that tall, and I was like, well, okay, just meet me in person then. But I sometimes have to do stuff when it comes to the weight room, when it comes to like mixing things up. So because for tall people it can be a little harder to work out too, but then being on the shorter side too, do you ever have to mix things up to sort of, because like being a powerlifter and being as tall as you are, it can be, I think it might be a little bit hard.
Oh yeah. I have to usually adjust equipment to fit me. So like hack squats, at my gym, we have like short, like 4-inch box that we just like strap to the end of it. And my friend Justin helped me with that. So that was really cool. And then like certain exercise, like there's a leg curl machine that I gotta put like a folded up mat in between my knees and the pad, because otherwise my knees go up too high. So it's just, and then I have like little handles I used to put on the leg extension machine so that I can reach the handles. Otherwise I'm like super tight in the machine. So it just takes little like engineering and rigging and So I have friends that help me with that if I need help, but it's nice.
I mean, I was that guy that was as tall as I am now, like as a freshman in high school, just that one kid that really shot up really early. So like I had times when I was doing leg extensions where like the thing would go up to my shin basically instead of like right at my foot, just because it was so yeah. I mean, it's and I the moment that you said like you were the one girl that worked out in gym in college, I was like, okay, seeing like the little short girl in the gym, going to the weight section, that must have been entertaining for some of the people to see, because we had the same thing at I went to Mankato and we had the same thing at our gym too, where it was like one or two girls, one of them was short and one of them was like medium size, and yeah, it just and how do you deal with that sort of intimidation factor? Because that's one thing, especially for women getting started, that they're always afraid of is that, like, oh, I'm just afraid to go and touch the weights, either because they think that they're going to get big or just because they don't want to be the only, woman in there doing that. How did you get over that? Even if you didn't have that fear, but how did you get over all that in college? Just be like, hey, you know what? I will be that one person that goes into the, quote unquote guys section of the gym and works out.
You know, I I was I had times when I was like nervous and stuff about what I was doing if I was doing it right, but I never like had that like, well, I'm just not going to go touch it because I'm too nervous that people are watching me. I was more had the mentality like, watch me. Like I'll be that one little girl, and like you said, the little girl in the gym, and I'm always the one that like people come up to me like, "Oh, do you need help with something?" And I'm like, "I got it. No, thank you." And I will like show people like I can do it just fine. Like just leave me be, kind of thing. So I guess I've always just kind of had that mentality though, like growing up and like doing sports and stuff. Like basketball, I was always underestimated because they're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go guard the small girl," but like I was quick and I could like get the ball out and stuff, and I was actually pretty tough to guard. So I don't know, I guess that kind of just has always been me from a young age.
Meanwhile, if I had zero muscle at all on me, I would still get asked to help move people's furniture and still do all that stuff. So, hey, there's blessings and curses for everything in life, everyone. It's the one thing that we got here. But I mean, I also love to talk genetics on this podcast because I hear this all the time. Oh my God, I want his arms. I want her abs. I want their back. And you just want to strangle them because like you're like you can work out just like someone, you can train, I mean you can eat just like them, you can do everything that they do. Unfortunately, you are not going to see the same results as the person that you're looking for, because genetics are a thing and a lot of people don't mention that, but it's like it's a big part of it. But on top of that, whenever someone first gets started working out, they always have that one body part that really really takes off, that they don't have to train as much, and they have that one body part that just drags behind it. They have to train to oblivion to catch up. What was one body part that took off for you, and what was one body part that you've just had to drag behind?
I guess things that grow easily for me would probably be like legs and shoulders. Like when I first started, I was coming from a gymnastics background, so legs and shoulders like already were established pretty much. But one thing that really lags for me is I would say is glutes. I have a really hard time or I had a hard time engaging them and activating glutes. So I was using a lot of my lower back instead. So I've had to like even now I have to like kind of like stop and think about stuff for a little bit or like lighten the weight to make sure I'm hitting the right spot to feel it in my glutes. And that was one area I've really, really had to work on to grow and to match the rest of my body.
Yeah, glute. I mean, don't even get me started on lower body. Everyone already knows that my calves I hate more than, and I even messaged her everyone before I met her saying, if we do meet, do not point and laugh at my calves because it's still a sore spot. And luckily, I think I hid them a little bit from people, so I didn't really have that happen. But yeah, I mean, just yeah, legs. I don't know. For me, it's just a mystery. I mean, I've made the joke I could inject pure muscle into my legs, and they're not going to gain an ounce of it. It's just not meant to be. But being that you are both, a power lifter and a bodybuilder, let's be honest. You look at a power lifter and you look at a bodybuilder, it's two different body types. Did you struggle at first to sort of find a balance between the two, or was it one of those? Because I've had multiple, guests on that did both sports and they're able to find that balance. But was that a struggle at all when you got started to sort of find the balance between, training too much like a powerlifter or training too much like a bodybuilder?
No, I kind of like had it planned out where I was like, okay, I'm gonna like take like my year and a half off from bodybuilding to grow, and I'm gonna focus on powerlifting. And then I still followed like a bodybuilder's diet and stuff. At times when I first started, like 2017, I probably wasn't eating enough food. But I still wanted to maintain like I knew I had to gain weight, which was fine. But I still wanted to maintain the look that I like looked like an athlete. So I never really had the like mindset that you like have to get super fluffy or anything like, or like weight moves weight kind of thing. Um, Again, that mentality was just kind of like, oh, you're small. And I was like, watch me. Like, I don't care. So I guess that was kind of what I did is I still like did all of my stuff like a bodybuilder and then I just changed my training up. And then now it's like being like in my pro season and stuff, I am purely focusing on bodybuilding right now and not so much of like powerlifting movements, just because we need to develop certain areas and stuff. But at some point, we'll hopefully get back to that.
Is there really any comparison to competing in a powerlifting meet as there is to competing in a bodybuilding show, or are they just two, completely separate things when it comes to just how you feel when you're performing in the moment?
I would say that's a different kind of like adrenaline high. Like both of them are like, because I get asked this all the time, like, well, if you could pick one, what would it be? And I hate that question because it's like, why do I have to pick? But for the moment,
I've
like,
always
yeah,
said if we could have these guests like on the bodybuilding stage do like bench press or deadlift or something like that, we got to combine them somehow. But everyone
in
again,
heels.
oh, in heels too, yeah. But again, I think most people would be disappointed because they don't realize how dieted down you are. You're not going to be putting up max numbers up there. But yeah, I found that would be hilarious. I think if you had the guys come out and the girls come out, in their bikinis and everything like that, just doing benches and deadlifts. But yeah, sorry, I had to interrupt for that little tangent right there.
That's okay. Sorry, what was the question now? I
The
completely
difference
forgot.
between your mindset when you're
Oh,
competing in powerlifting and bodybuilding.
yes. So when you get on stage, like bodybuilding is like everything like leads up to that like one moment. Like the past like for me last year was like 7 months led up to that one moment, and you get 30 seconds on stage by yourself to really showcase it. So like it's a really big adrenaline rush and like just a big high and stuff. And especially like winning is incredible. And with powerlifting, it's very much more like physical versus like mental. Mental side, yes, because of like, oh man, this is a heavy weight. Like I need to make sure I can lift this kind of thing, or like I don't know if I can do it. But if you're not confident in yourself, like you're not going to get the weight. So it's just like performance anxiety in front of like a crowd of people doesn't really bother me, or anything like that, because I'm just like, if I don't get the weight, I don't get the weight. But with powerlifting, it's kind of more of a different like headspace you have to get into, and you have to like fight and stuff, and like I don't know how to describe it, but it's just like I listen to like heavy metal, for example, like when it's time to lift, because it's just like you want to be so focused on that. And like during bodybuilding, it's you have to make your posing correct and like you have to stand correctly and stuff, and it's a lot more focus, I guess. Like not a lot more focus, but no, it's just long story short, it's just a different kind of intensity and high for each of them.
Oh, heavy metal should just be the official sponsor of powerlifting. I mean, let's be completely honest. The amount of royalties that these bands make at the powerlifting meets has got to be, it's got to be just absolutely ridiculous. So, but it again, like I've talked to powerlifters too, and I understand like what you're talking about. Like you have to get into that mindset. You usually dig down deep, especially when you're going into these lifts. A lot of people get really angry. And there's that whole slapping thing that I don't even understand, where people are just beating the crap out of each other on the back, which I would get mad at that person. I'd be like, what are you doing that for? I don't care. That's not going to help me at all. But, that's a whole different thing. But one thing about powerlifting I got to ask you about, have you ever tried the sniffing salts?
Oh yeah, all the time.
That's on my bucket list to just do it once. I might do it on the podcast. I might do it on something because like, I see these I've seen them in like football movies and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I got to try it at least once. And I see that powerlifters done it. But as you can tell, I'm that type of hyper where if I do sniffing salts and I'm not like on near death, for the safety of the public, I don't know, if that's really that great of an idea. My head might explode. Other things might happen, but yes.
They're pretty awesome. I mean, I still will use them on like a top set for a lift one day or something. I just don't want to like rely on them, but I do like to use them every once in a while.
Yeah. No, and I've seen some of my friends do it as well, and then they've even offered it to me, and I said, it's got to be in a controlled environment where I can't like damage property or go on a you're or something like that. So you're gonna strap me down somewhere, and then I'll do all the smelling salt that you want. But that again, that is just me. But going into bodybuilding, I mean, the one thing that I was so surprised about this sport when I first really got into it was how hard posing is. I would have never guessed it in a million years. A lot of people, and just like everyone in the general public, I think would assume that like, oh, the working out or the nutrition must be the hardest thing. But for so many of these guests that I have on, it's the posing. What has your experience been like just with posing in general?
When I first started, I sucked really bad, just like anybody else. But it's a constant thing you have to work on. Even in off season and stuff, you have to make sure that your mobility is on points. That way you can turn to the side correctly and you can spread your lats. It takes a lot of massage work to make sure that your muscles aren't so tight that you can't like pull everything out how you should be. So there's a lot of background stuff that you have to do too. It's not just a matter of like practicing it, but practice obviously makes perfect. And just having help with that too is a big part of it. Just for someone else to look at you and just give you pointers of like the smallest thing can make a difference of a hand placement, or how you're turned towards the judges, or how your posing is compared to somebody else, especially like in my aspect, because I am a small person, I have to rely on the illusion that I'm going to create. I'm not going to have size to my advantage, so I just need to rely on that illusion and make myself look bigger and look like full, and um, highlight my strengths of my frame.
And when you're on that stage, because this is a question that I actually asked two of the other guests that I had on that were standing next to me, later on at the show that I went to. What are you thinking when you're walking on that stage? Because one of the guests said, like, I'm thinking absolutely nothing. I'm just trying, and the other one just thinking, I'm trying to suck in my gut. But if you can remember, like, what are you thinking that moment that you walk on that stage? Because, like, for all of the hard work that you put into this sport, it really does just all come down to that. And that's what I think makes this bodybuilding so special, is that, like, all the effort and everything that you do, it comes down to like a minute on stage, which doesn't happen in any other sport.
Mm-hmm. I guess like in my mind, and I can appoint this to like powerlifting and bodybuilding for like my mind, like what I'm thinking. Like I'm not, I'm really focusing on like certain cues in my head that I need to focus on. Like one of my biggest feedback last year was that I couldn't like hold my stomach in at my first couple shows because I was breathing like a powerlifter through my stomach. So I had to like reteach myself how to breathe. So that was one of my big things, was just like holding that, and like I have like a cue with like my toes, like to scrunch my toes to like squeeze the right muscles kind of thing. And like, so I'm just thinking about cues. And then I'm also thinking about like, I'm finding the head judge and I'm going to stare him down and I'm going to be like, yeah, look at me. Like, hello, I came here just to see you. Like, it's hard because I'm not like a super like extroverted, like overly confident person, like all the time, but like on stage, it's just that one time you get to be. And I'm like, I put all this work in and I'm going to show it off and I'm going to do my best to be the one that stands out. So, and you have to make yourself stand out, in whatever little way you possibly can. So I just like, it's like a switch. I just turn on like strut mode and I'm just like, all right, here we go.
That is one thing that I found funny about the last show that I was at, was that, like, yeah, some of these people are so confident on stage, but then you see them off the stage and it is a complete 180. And that's for me as well. The minute I stop recording this podcast, I go back to, a little less hyper version of this. It's still a little hyper, but it gets toned down a little bit, but it's just the mixture of of walking on that stage. But now we go to my favorite question on this entire podcast. What is your go-to post-show meal?
I guess I'm always just kind of like, I just want a burger and some sweet potato fries. I keep it pretty plain, I guess. Like, and maybe not even like a burger, because sometimes that gets really greasy. But I like sweet potato fries, sushi, and nachos, and a cookie. That's like what I'm. So it's a weird mixture of things.
I've never heard that combo before in the over 500 podcasts that I've done on this. So it's something new every time. So sushi, nachos, cookies, and
sweet potato fries. That's it. That's all I want.
That is, hey, more power to you. I mean, like I tell a million times, I would just rent out a Five Guys and tell them you're feeding me until I either die, puke, or pass out. But either way, I'm getting my money's worth. But post-show blues is something that is not really talked about on social media, I don't think, as much as it should, because a lot of people don't understand that, like, yeah, you're not going to maintain that look for 24/7. It's not a sustainable look, and you're not at your healthiest when you're on that stage. But what was that like for you when you first learned that, like, hey, this look that I've worked so hard to achieve, I'm not going to be able to maintain it? And has it gotten easier for you as your career in the sport has gone on to sort of accept the fact that I'm going to have to put on some weight after the show?
Yeah, I mean, at first it was really hard, like especially I would say 2017, when I really like got myself like lean for the first time. Coming out of that, I was like, it was my first time trying like a reverse diet, because I had read more about it and I was like, okay, I don't want to screw this up and I want to make sure that I'm, don't overdo it and stuff. And um especially because I had won 2 overalls that year, and so I was like, I have to set the example, and that's always been like in the back of my head with everything. But I think I went too slow at that point because I wasn't eating enough like too long afterwards. And then like, as I've gone on, I feel like it's gotten easier because I'm just like, okay, like this is just what we need to do. And at that point I'm just like, I just want some freaking food. Like, I'll have a little bit of fluff on me. It's fine. And even this off season, probably has been one of the harder ones to go through too, just because I'm like, okay, I have to, you know, compete with the pros. And so I need to put on more weight. And that was like a really big, like, mind, because it was just was like, I am like at my heaviest weight I've ever been since like I was in like college before I started bodybuilding. And that just like brought back like really bad like memories and just like of how I felt and stuff. So that was like hard to work through and stuff, but it's getting better. It's just kind of a matter of like your body changes so much within the span of like a year that it's like you're like at your lowest and then you're at your highest and stuff. So it's hard not to like focus on that number, but it's easier when you have like good support and you have like other things to measure, like look how much food I'm eating, look how much better I feel, like I have all my hormones back in check. I'm strong as all get out in the gym, and so that's always easier to focus on those things versus like just the number on the scale or like having abs. Like I really don't care about having abs in the off season. Like I'd rather have food.
And when it comes to just the reaction that you get as a bodybuilder, what was your friends and family's reaction when you announced them like, hey, I want to, try bodybuilding and powerlifting, and what was their whole thought process? Like, oh, Kayla's trying that, I guess, or
When I first started bodybuilding, I mean, my family was very supportive and my friends were supportive. And but it was like kind of like a gradual increase in like the seriousness of it. So like they just kind of had to get over the fact of like, hey, I'm gonna have my own food today, or like I'm bringing my own food, and I'm sorry, it's nothing personal, but I'm not gonna eat like the tater tot hot dish that you made tonight. Sorry, you know. um, and then like I had my first year, I had a boyfriend in college that I was dating since like high school and stuff, and he had a little bit harder time accepting it. Um, because then after like the show I would try to like eat healthy again, and he's like, "Oh, you're doing that again? That's going to last." And like I was like, "Thanks for being supportive." And my mom worries about it too. She's like, "I just don't like when you get that lean, Kayla," and stuff. And I'm like, "It's fine, mom." Like, I'm so there's like concern there and stuff. Needless to say, that boyfriend, it didn't work out, obviously. Um, and then, but now, like, as I've gone through it, like I have probably the best support I probably could ever have. Like I have friends that are like so supportive. My fiance, soon to be husband, is like the most supportive person that I could ever have. And I've found so many really like good close friends through this process that like I know we're going to be lifelong friends. And I just feel like with bodybuilding and powerlifting, the people that you meet and become close to like become really close, because it's just like not everyone goes through this stuff or like understands it. And so to have that like small circle of people is like really, really special.
well, and by the time this does get published, it'll be probably a couple days after their wedding. So everyone, congrats to Kayla and her husband on tying the knot, and that is great. And was there any hassle at all, being that you are in an off season, with wedding dress finding? Because I've had some people who they made the decision to get married either when they're about to start a prep, or when they're in a prep, or when they're in the off season, and then that's kind of hard to find a wedding dress.
So it's funny. So I had my wedding. So we got engaged after Junior USA. So like in May of last year. And I ended up doing a show until July 31st because I did USA. So that was my last show. And my wedding dress, so like I had like scheduled my wedding dress appointment for like the first weekend of August back in March or May. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be like 1 week post show, but this is fine. Like, and so we went and stuff, and it was fun. And I ordered my dress like a size bigger than what I measured, because I was like, well, I'll probably gain like be around like this weight, and stuff. And I was like, this should be fine. And then I gained more weight than what I thought I was going to. And I was like, so then I was a little like, is this going to fit? And I was like, what if it doesn't fit? I'm going to be SOL. But it fits. Everything's fine. So that wasn't too bad. My biggest worry was just like the length was just like, I don't want to have to cut off a million feet of this thing, but they ordered it to my size, so that was nice. Had to pay extra for ordering less material, but it is what it is. Makes sense, right? but uh, but yeah, no, it wasn't too terrible. Just mostly, I guess the style of wedding dress you get too matters, especially like figure with like big lats and stuff like that. You got to make sure it closes. So
That's the first thing I noticed about her when I met her in person was the back and the lats too. So I was like, okay, wedding dresses. That's not a thing that I've heard of that a lot of people. I mean, you got to have them custom made a lot of times, but I do not understand how getting less material costs more. Again, it's just how some things work, I guess. But that to me is just, yeah, I do not know. But I mean, getting back to sort of like the reaction they get. I mean, like, let's be honest, you're not the average looking woman if you're to walk out in public, especially as you get closer to a show. But even in your off season, like you are significantly more muscular than the average woman. I sort of like to compare it to sort of like being a mini celebrity, where it's just you drop more people's attention just naturally. And what has that been like for you? And has it gotten easier for you, as you've gotten more and more into the sport to sort of accept the fact that like, hey, I am going to draw a little bit more attention than I might have before I started doing this?
yeah, it depends on like where I'm at, but like I do expect it now. Like if people stare at me and stuff, especially because I'm so small, like a small person, but I'm just like muscular. So like people stare, people make comments all the time. Like just at Target yesterday, the guy at the checkout was like, "What gym do you go to?" And I was like wearing like just a tank top and like leggings, and I was like, "I go to Evolution." She's like, "Oh yeah, you look like you lift," and I was like, just a little bit. So I just like make a joke out of it now. People like make comments, but I've had people say stuff as far as like, "Oh, do you do MMA?" or like, "You're a gymnast," and I was like, "Well, I was a gymnast, but now I bodybuild and stuff." And I've had random girls walk up and like squeeze my bicep and be like, "Oh my gosh, your arms," and I'm just like, "Okay."
Which people
And
people don't do that. Like let's like just don't do. I mean, it's like I went to a bodybuilding show and I had no urge to do that whatsoever. And it's like it's not that hard, everyone. It's like come on. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and then like out at other places like I guess like common places like the mall or like stuff like that, like I get more looks just because people aren't used to seeing that. And then that sometimes I'll get a little uncomfortable with like all the people staring at me, but that's more so towards like prep where I'm just like I don't want anyone like to talk to me or anything like that. But off season I'll kind of like mess with people sometimes and just like kind of go with it, whatever, and let them toot their horn, whatever.
Oh,
So
in college when I was in my most shape, I would just say, "Oh, I've never worked out a day in my life. I just ate my vegetables. Really, and that's the whole excuse that I use myself. I like to mess with them as well. But when it comes to things that I hate in this world, there is. I don't even know if there's anything worse than cardio. And when I say cardio, I mean actual running. I go for walks all the time. I'll be going on one tonight as well. But when it comes to cardio, I mean, it is the bane of my existence. And unfortunately, when you become a bodybuilder, you sign a deal with the devil sort of when it comes to cardio. What is your relationship like with cardio?
I don't mind it. I do cardio like 4 days a week for like 35 minutes. So nothing terrible. And I actually like to do it like fasted because then I feel like it just wakes me up. But more so just like walks. I like to do lots of walks outside. I have a puppy, so take her for walks. Me and my fiance take her for walks in the mornings too when I'm not doing like treadmill cardio or whatever. Um, but it's just part of the sport. And then as long as I don't have to run, we're solid.
I have always made the joke to people: you will have to be chasing me with a knife if you want to see me run. That's the only scenario right there. But sleep is another thing that is not talked about as much as it should be. Just not even just in health and fitness, but just in life in general. And for anyone that tells me it's not that big of a deal, I always tell them go and pull an all nighter and then try to work out the next day and tell me how that works out for you. What is your sleep schedule like? Because I mean, people do not understand this, but with bodybuilders, there's a time when you can get so lean and so tired that you aren't able to sleep, which is it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. But especially as you get closer to a show, sleep becomes so much more vital and it becomes harder. But even for a lot of bodybuilders I talk to in the off season, they sometimes struggle with sleep. Have you had any problems with sleep, or are you one of those lucky few that I hate more than life itself that are still able, no matter what, to get the proper amount of sleep?
So I'm kind of like a grandma. I'm in bed by like 9 p.m. and up at like 5 a.m. But that's just me. I like work really well in the mornings. But during prep and stuff, I usually don't have issues with sleep, only maybe like a couple weeks out from a show when I'm just getting like nervous and stuff, like I'll probably wake up like once to use the bathroom, but I've always been the kind of person that like when I go to sleep, my head hits the pillow and I'm out. So luckily I've never struggled with that, like insomnia or anything like that. So yeah, usually only if like something's really stressing me out or like on my mind, then I can't sleep, but no, not usually.
I have found it's more common in bodybuilders to be sort of that grandma when it comes to sleep schedules, where it's like I've gotten some messages from some of them at 4 a.m. and I haven't been asleep yet that night. Now that was a few years ago. Now I'm slowly, getting to a more healthier sleep schedule, but I'm still kicking and screaming and dragging myself to it. But yep, that is one thing that I've found as well. But now we go to my two favorite questions. If someone were to walk up to you and say, Kayla, we made a decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone will go along with it, will be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Oh boy. I have to think about that one for a
I
second.
can give you my answer while you think.
Okay, let's hear your answer first and then
Okay. Well,
I'll
obviously,
say.
I mean, pay is one thing that I've always said a thing where it's like my whole thing is like if you're a pro in this sport, you should not have to have like a day. Like you should be financially supported enough that you could just focus on this because this is a lifestyle that is hard enough as it is if you had nothing else to do in your life. If you literally just woke up, ate and sleep and breathe gym, it would still be significantly hard on your life. But people that I hear that, sometimes some of them work two jobs or just do all, it's even more impressive to me. It's like, it shouldn't have to be like that. But when it comes to the competitions, like in and of themselves, just the fact that I've heard so many stories of people who talk about how you could compete in back-to-back shows and back-to-back weekends with the same lineup, and there might be different placings if you look exactly the same, just because, like every sport, there's human error when it comes to either judging and trust me, as a baseball pitcher, there have been times where I told the catcher, move aside this next pitch. We're going to drill this ump. But, they're just like with shows in bodybuilding, it just depends on what the judges want. Just to find, so my thing would just be just to find more of a base of like, this is exactly what we're looking for. We've all agreed as judges, this is exactly how we're going to judge it so that there's not going to be like that one show where someone's like, oh, they're just a little too lean for my taste, where it's like, well, it shouldn't be your taste then. It should be like overall what you're looking. So yeah, that's just my thing too.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, some kind of compensation, would be nice, obviously, but I think maybe more of like some kind of regulation on like getting testing done for making sure that you're healthy. Like you have to do some kind of like blood work or something and have it cleared like that you're healthy enough to compete like so long before a show happens or something. Just with all the stuff that happened like last year with all the deaths and stuff like that, I think there needs to be something done. I know that there's been a lot of talk about it and like that you should do this or that or like what they should be regulating or not regulating because it's like when you sign up for bodybuilding you know what you're getting into and you know the risks of course, so it's kind of like on you, but at the same time I feel like there could be something as far as like a blood work panel done prior to a show or every so often that you have to undergo, just like USAPL powerlifting. Once you become a professional in that, they can come, you sign a waiver and they can come and draw your or like make you take a P test to see if you're on drugs like anytime. Like they can come to your house, your work, like they have to know like 3 addresses that you're at and they can just show up anytime. So not necessarily anything like that because like obviously like PEDs are allowed, but just some kind of blood work schedule or something just to help with mitigating that.
I'd have a pee bag inside of my leg the entire time wherever I was though at all times, and I'd be like, oh yeah, just give me a couple minutes, I got to go to the bathroom real quick. But no, I've heard, like, I've even seen on some shows where they just like interrupt people, like they're either just working out the gym or whatever, like, oh yeah, we're here, we got to take a pee, you got to take your pee test, and it's like, hey, I mean they do a thorough job of it, but like I told you, the 4 years that I've done this specific podcast, 3 of them have been focused on, the bodybuilding and the health and fitness. Last year was a shock for me as well. Cause like I said, I've been doing this for 2 years up until that point, and just seeing all the deaths that happened in the sport, it was shocking to me. What was your reaction as a competitor? Just seeing like, cause it was an enigma last year where it's like more people died than I think, at least on average. It was at least since I've been covering it. What was your reaction like as a competitor just to how bad things got last year for a lot of people?
It definitely, I think, gives you a little bit of a like reality check that this is like very serious and that you really need to know and understand what you're doing. or have and make sure that you have the right coach with you, that you have blood work done consistently, that you are healthy before doing this, and that you do your research and not just like use like whatever you can to get to the top as fast as possible. That's not the way to do it, because that's not healthy. So it was really really sad to like see all of that happen, and there's a lot of it that's like, oh, it's correlated to COVID and stuff, but it's like you just don't know, you don't know. um, but it just kind of, like I said, it gave like a good reality check and just made me also really want to make sure that I get my blood work done regularly and that I'm healthy, and just also like backed my decision to work with the coach that I do have, because he's very very adamant about your health over everything, and that is something that I value as well, and like what I put into my clients too, because I have had a great experience like that. I've gone through hormone stuff, and I want to make sure that they all have that too, as far as like going forward with their careers as well. So I think that's probably the biggest thing out of it, was just like, you want to, and then this is like a sport that you're doing for fun. Like you can't, like, I know some people make this their whole life and stuff, and like it is a very big part of my life, but it is not the only thing that I do in my whole life. So I'm not, going to put myself into those types of risks to like win a trophy. Like that's just dumb, in my opinion. Like,
Oh yeah.
I would much rather have longevity in my sport and just have a good, successful, fun career than just sacrifice my health over it.
Yeah, I mean, you are not going to be financially compensated unless you're like at the Olympia basically, or compete in like the top 3 or whatever to even consider having this be
Hmm.
like a full-time job thing. So I think a lot of people make that mistake too as well. But I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, and that the most shocking part to me about last year was just realizing that there are some coaches, and I'm not naming names, that really don't seem to care about their competitors' health. And that was what shocking revelation for me too, is obviously, people know who I may be talking about. I'm not even going to mention names, but like, it was just, that was a shock to me as well. Be like, oh, there's some people out there who are just, it's all about the wins and it's all about the results for them. And I think people are slowly taking a step back and realizing that, like, hey, you need to focus more on your health, kind of like what you were saying. So I do hope that that's the case. And so far, I think this year, just based on what I've been hearing from other athletes too, it's taken that little bit of a turn. So I hope it continues with that. But this is one thing that I think every single time I have a bodybuilder, just a health and fitness guest on in general, and it's just my human nature. Why do they do this? Why do they do this to themselves? I hear all these prep brain stories. I hear all these stories that you couldn't imagine. Well, obviously you could because you compete in the sport, but like, I just think to myself, why do they put themselves through this? And I bet you still hear that, even from people that have known you for a while, and just from people in general too. They're just like, Kayla, why do you do this to yourself? What is your why that you like to respond to that when they ask you that?
For me, it's a lot of just like, I like to push myself and I like to challenge it, and I love to see my progress. So, and I know that it's like never ending, and that's why I keep doing it. And because I just want to be the best. Like I, some people do it for like, I guess, inspirational reasons and stuff, but like I don't know, if I just want to be good at something. I've been, I guess, underestimated my whole life because I'm of my size, or being a girl, or not being smart enough, not being strong enough. And this is something that I really really love to do, and I just want to like prove to myself like that I can do it and I can be the best at something. I'm not doing it to prove anyone wrong. I'm not doing it to prove it, you know, put it in record books or anything like that. I just want to do it for myself. And I love it. And I love the lifestyle, and I love the discipline, and I love how hard it is and stuff. And, I just like to keep going with it. So that would be my why, I guess.
She doesn't do it for the one reason that I despise some people, are the ones that do one show and then they think that they can just have that, and then they just put that on the resume for the rest of their lives as like, I know what I'm talking about. I did one amateur show, everyone. So more props to her for that. And yeah, I have had other people too that like, yeah, they do it because they're trying to, you know, prove someone wrong or do something like that. And that's a slippery slope there. So I like that you have a motivation of, yeah, you just want to be the best at something. You just do it because you love it too, which is, a lot of positivity comes out from just doing stuff that you love and all that stuff that I don't want to get into. But I mean, when we do have you on a year from now, because I'd love to talk to you in a year just to give us an update on what you've been up to, where would you like to be at in
Gotta
your,
touch back on that pro debut.
absolutely. So where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding journey? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved a year from now?
In a year, well, I don't think I'm necessarily going to be on stage yet in a year from now. Probably about like a year and a half or so. We're thinking like next fall for a show, just because I have a lot of growing to do. But a year from now, like, just at a good point to be ready for a prep. Nice long off season, growth made and stuff, good progress made. Um, as far as like business and everything, I would like to see my business grow. I'm adding a few coaches to my team, which is awesome. Growing in my knowledge. I'm working on a functional diagnostic nutritionist certification right now, so that will help me with assessing diagnostic tools like the GI map, Dutch testing, more lab work and stuff like that for clients. And then I can also recommend them and order them lab work. I don't have to go through like a doctor or anything like that. So that's going to be finished up in about a year. And then, yeah, we're just going to, keep renovating our house. Basically, my husband likes to do house projects and fix things a lot, so we're gonna keep working on that. And yeah, so not too much. I'm just kind of hoping this year is just pretty chill, to be honest.
Please tell me you're going to enjoy food though on your honeymoon at least.
Oh yeah, like 100%. Oh yeah, yeah. We got this like prime rib that's like this thick, and it's like juicy, and it's gonna be. And we got so much dessert. Oh my gosh, like there's gonna be so much food there.
I've had two guests that their honeymoon was just basically them eating salad, and I was like, "What kind of quality of life are we talking about here, everyone? Like, at what point do you consider putting yourself down? Like, if that's what you're doing at your honeymoon, everyone. So that's just
Yep.
there's that. And I mean, you're on a podcast. What's the name of your podcast? I'll give it a plug here.
The podcast that I co-host with actually my coach Jason and another co-host John Gorman is called Elite Physique University. So we do an episode usually every week, and you guys can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So he puts the videos up on YouTube too.
I was gonna say, like, if you didn't say YouTube, I would have said that's the spark. That's what I would have done. It would have been so much easier if I didn't do it. But I already started on video, so now everyone expects it on video. So then that becomes this whole big thing. But I'll leave a link down below for everyone to check that out too. And then lastly, is there anyone else that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
I guess I should shout out my coach, Jason Theobald, from Scooby Prep. He's been awesome. He's been a great mentor of mine too, as far as like my knowledge progressing and everything, and just been a really, really good coach and friend throughout this process. And just really looking forward to all of that with what's coming. My gym friends over at Evolution Fitness in North Dakota. So if you ever are in Fargo, check that out.
Hopefully not during the winter.
Yeah, definitely not during the winter. My fiance, obviously, Micah, he's just my number one person.
I was hoping that you would have left him out, so I'd be like, "Oh, okay, we got her on that one."
No, I can't leave him out.
Well, we had one that left him out, and I was like, "Aren't you forgetting someone?" They're like, "Oh crap, can you edit that out?" And I was like, "No, that's staying in. Like that's."
No, I definitely wouldn't forget him because we were just talking about it yesterday, like goals and stuff, and just how much like he's very serious about powerlifting and like how serious he is about that is how serious I am about bodybuilding. That's how we get along so well. And he just wants to see me succeed, and I want the same for him. So I just couldn't ask for anything better. And then I guess New Ethics supplements and Total Nutrition in Lakeville. They're awesome. I use a lot of New Ethics stuff, and Total Nutrition is the bomb. Casey will hook you up with anything you need. He's like super knowledgeable about supplements and everything. So give them a call. Yeah, I think that's. Oh, and my suit designer, Bethany, obviously. Bethany is amazing. She's done my suits for 2 years now. And she made my freaking amazing suit that I turned pro in last year. It was just gorgeous. So if you want something that's going to be like really original, definitely go hit up Bethany at Evo Fit Suits. So
she was one of the two guests that I met and talked to at the show last week that made me feel small and made me feel depressed. Where I was just like, okay, I need to go home and work out now, and get back into this. But yeah, Bethany, she's been on the podcast before. I even talked to her after the show and said, I got to have you back on, so we're gonna have her back on. So, yep, shout out to those as well. And again, Kayla, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your journey. Love meeting you and love talking to you and, just hearing your story. And I cannot wait to see what the future has in store for you. And yeah, I cannot wait to have you on again and see where you're up to. But until then, everyone go and check her out. I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below. Like I always say, buyer beware. You will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies. And again, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.